Hello, everybody. The sun is shining. The championship season is upon us. Happy new season to you all. Welcome to, I think this is season 7 now of Terrace Talk, where, of course, the show where we get some insight from the upcoming opposition about where they're at, about the type of game they're expecting. And, of course, with the start of a new season, we can look ahead to opening day where there's so much optimism, so much enthusiasm around most clubs in the country about, obviously, what the season could entail. Nobody's impacted by results. There's no talk of managers being sacked unless in sort of some fairly extreme examples. So I'm expecting this to be a really nice upbeat chat with Stephen Jones, who of course is representing Millwall today. He's from the Chat with Chaps podcast. Stephen, you've been on before. We'd love having you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. I guess the first question is, how excited are you for the return of domestic football and of course the championship?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me. I've been on a couple of times now, so I'm sure that your listeners are used to me waffling on about us when we play you. So yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Excitement. I feel like you sort of you get the appetite, don't you? Because there's been tournament football, and it was last year. You kind of get a little bit of the appetite for football. A little bit early, but nothing quite beats your own team, the club you follow sort of up and down the country. So very, very much looking forward to the championship. Fixtures, friendlies don't quite cut it for me. You get your sort of snippets and you see your new players type thing, but very, very much like you said, a lot of optimism around both your club and ours at the moment. So should be a very, very good start to the season.
And I'm sure, like everyone else, there are key pillars, aren't there, in a summer? You have obviously all the transfer stuff running throughout. You have new kits. You have, like you say, that first pre-season friendly, which feels like a kind of starting board, even if different people kind of feel their relevance is whatnot. And of course, you have the fixture release day, which is a big part in terms of learning the schedule, learning what your life is going to be like for the next 10 months or so. So as a Millwall fan, when that drops and you see Norwich City away on the opening day, what were your reactions? What were your thoughts to the computer throwing that up for you guys?
Well, we were talking off air. One of my very, very good friends, Tom, is a huge Norwich fan. So when it was announced, there was a leak just before the official announcement, and we were kind of sort of messaging, going like, we could be on here, like this, it could actually be real. And so for me personally, drawing Norwich was a great one for us, obviously for my friendship group. But in terms of the Lions, obviously not a very happy hunting ground for us. So I'm sure perhaps from a Norwich perspective, it might have been a better draw, if you will, for you guys looking at our record there. But for me personally, very, very happy to be facing Norwich first up.
Yeah, November 1968, I believe, is the last time that Millwall recorded a win at Carrow Road. I remember picking up some quotes a couple of years ago from Gary Rowett speaking about a Carrow Road curse and whatnot. Norwich fans, of course, watching this will be able to think of grounds like Craven Cottage and Molineux in the past where Norwich have had similar records. I mean, this one feels particularly long. And as we were discussing off air, it's not like Norwich and Millwall have been in separate divisions for a real long period of time and they haven't played each other for 20 years. It's been quite consistent that the clubs have met since that point. I can imagine for those reasons, like you say, Carrow Road is maybe not the happiest hunting ground for Millwall supporters when you look ahead to games against Norwich away.
No, and I think it's something that always follows you around, doesn't it? Any record like that, whether it's an individual, like a goal scorer or a striker that's not scored goals for a while, or a number of clean sheets, for us, it's just been a long, long time since we've managed to record a victory at Carrow Road, and it almost becomes sort of like a, from the fan, oh, Norwich again. Oh, here we go. That's how it feels, and obviously, as I said earlier, having a friend that supports a team that keeps beating you isn't really ideal. But I guess the only difference this time is that I think you touched on it in your intro, that there's no pressures as such of any form or managers under pressure or anything like that. It's game one. There is a different feel to it, so maybe that might play into our advantage. Obviously, from my perspective, I'm hoping that's the case, but it's the first time. I mean, I don't ever recall us playing on the first day. I'm sure someone might be able to correct me on that, but maybe if for any Millwall fans listening, there's a glimmer of hope there for us that might lift the Carrow Road curse, as Gary Rowett called it.
Yes, indeed. Talk to me about Millwall's summer then, because certainly sort of looking out and we immediately when you talk about summer business, you tend to talk about transfers, right? So that maybe feels like a good place to start. Clearly, Josh Coburn was the one that maybe was eye catching in terms of the fee that was paid, but also the ability to attract him back to the Den. Massimo Luongo, a name that Norwich fans know well from his time in Suffolk. There's been a couple of goalkeepers as well, Zach Sturge, Alfie Doherty, who obviously people will be familiar with from his spell at Luton. Where do you feel that the club is at transfer-wise? I guess this is probably a two-party question. Are you happy with what's been done so far, and what would you like to see added, or maybe you're quite happy with where the club are at?
We've had a good transfer window. We've strengthened areas that I think, or most of the areas that I think we've needed to. The players you've mentioned there, obviously Coburn was with us last year. Probably had an unfortunate season with injuries, but when he played, had impact in games. So we're hoping that maybe having him full time, getting back to fitness will be good for him. Alfie Doherty, obviously played in the Premier League. He's actually a Millwall fan as well, so that was quite a good sort of coup for the club. A player that obviously doesn't need to be told what it takes to perhaps play for the club and what it means, having been a supporter. Our most important transfer business at the moment, I say this at time of recording, I would imagine it should at least stay the same up until the fixture on Saturday, is holding on to our two key players in Jafet Tanganga and Mihailo Ivanovic, centre back and forward. They're both sought after, both players that in their own way are showing that they're more than capable at this level. And I think so far, fingers crossed, there's still time in the window, of course, but I think holding on to those would be the biggest piece of business, and we've been able to do it so far. So hopefully that continues. But relatively happy. We're possibly a little bit light in midfield. I'm sure we'll come on to later who might be playing in key areas. We possibly need another central midfielder. We've got a couple of experienced players in there, but a lot of youth. So that might be somewhere we still need to strengthen. But overall, fairly happy from our business so far.
I mean, just to very quickly reflect on last season, because Norwich kind of saw two different Millwalls in the games that they played. Obviously, the one around Christmas, you guys were between managers, and Norwich won that game. And then obviously the one on Easter Monday, which was very different, where I think Norwich fans saw an Alex Neil team that, in many ways, they could kind of relate to, given the job that he did here in the second half of that season, albeit sort of pushed Norwich into the playoffs. You guys just fell a little bit short. But that sort of second half of the season, Alex Neil more generally, does that offer you a lot of encouragement about what this season could look like? Because Norwich fans, as I'm sure your friend knows, don't need too much kind of inside knowledge, I guess, on Alex Neil because of the work that he did during his spell here.
Absolutely. I think, Alex Neil, I'll be honest, at the time wasn't the name I wanted particularly. No doubt in his record, he got you guys, he was promoted with you. I think he was promoted with Sunderland from League One as well. So had pedigree on his CV, but I just wasn't quite sure. I think fast forward now, most Millwall fans love the guy. He's completely come in and given us belief more than anything. I think Neil Harris, club legend, former manager, kind of painted us as the underdogs most of the time. We was always, punching above our weight, and it was almost, you almost felt like that's how we were going to set up. Alex Neil has kind of gone, no, we're more than that. We're gonna go to places, and we're gonna consider ourselves not favourites, but we're gonna consider ourselves, a dangerous side. We played quite well at Burnley on the last day. Okay, we didn't quite make it, but we had an opportunity to get a second goal, and perhaps it would have been different. Just as an example. So, lots of optimism with Neil. He's getting the best out of certain players. We've got a couple of cracking attacking players that if they're fully fit, which they should be on Saturday, will be raring to go. And they seem to be all playing for the manager. I know when managers leave, perhaps there might be sour taste in some of the Norwich fans' mouths with managers that leave, or if it doesn't start to go well. But so far, from what we've seen, Alex Neil gets Millwall, and Millwall are starting to get Alex Neil.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because there was a bit of a sour ending at Norwich, but ultimately you mentioned Alex Neil now, and it's all about that Wembley day
Mm.
and that he gave them against Middlesbrough, which was, I was in the crowd that day, and people shared it with their families, and that's what he's kind of remembered for at Norwich. So I think there's still a lot of love there, which isn't always the case when a manager goes back
Mm.
to a former club. I have to be honest, and you the sort of final statement there that you said about him getting the club. When I saw the links initially, and I'm sure Norwich fans maybe felt the same, which is you looked at it and felt, oh yeah, I can see that. That feels like a good fit, which from the outside and from what you've kind of said, it feels like it has been. Like he sort of feels like the right type of character to be manager of Millwall.
Yeah, and I think it's every fan of every club, whether you're in the bottom of the pyramid or the top of the pyramid, will look at, there'll be certain managers that you look at and go, maybe not, or it's worked, and it's proofs in the pudding. Managers get sacked or resign or up and down the country every season, but Alex Neil he's just bought into what the club are trying to do. We do have a completely different philosophy than what we have had over the last couple of years in terms of off the field, on the field, and he's bought into what the board have asked him to do, and the players are on board. And again, other managers, and Neil's the same at Millwall. If you get the fans on side, it's half the battle. Obviously, we want to see our team producing, but if you've got the fans on side, you do get a little bit of leeway. And I think Neil's earned that in the 6 or 7 months that he's been with us. Obviously, there's expectation that we go one step further, but people genuinely are right behind him and will give him a chance to succeed.
What are the expectations this season? Because, like you say, you think about Millwall over the last couple of years, and they have been in that kind of playoff pack, sometimes kind of falling a little bit below that, sometimes obviously getting very, very close. Last year was eighth, as you say. It could have gone different on the final day. It was Liam Manning's Bristol City that got in the end. What are your kind of expectations and feelings going into this season? I guess probably it differs, doesn't it, from what the fans want to maybe what the club want. So is there a gap between those two?
Well, I don't think so. We had a fans forum 2 weeks ago, I think it was, the beginning of last week, and Alex Neil was quoted as to have said, "My job is to take us to the Prem," and ultimately that is his job. Whether or not that's this season or next, I don't know. Personally, I think they'll be very disappointed if we're not in and around the top six. That's quite a statement from us, and the fans sometimes are known to be carried away, myself included. We all dream of finally making it into the Premier League, but I think the general consensus is we've got the best squad that, in my opinion, I'm sure any other Millwall fans that are listening to this, we've probably got the best squad that we've had in a long, long time to really attack this division. So I don't want to say that the top six, if we don't make it, would be a disaster, but I feel like there would be an incredible amount of disappointment if we don't. Obviously, that brings its own pressure and expectations. I know, obviously, Norwich are again, like us, a tip to be in and around the top six. And if you're not quite there in January and February, that those kind of the noises from outside start up. But that I think the fans and the board and the manager are quite aligned, and that's the aim. That's what we'll be trying to achieve.
Yeah, and there'll be as you know and described there'll be so many clubs in that pack trying to get in
Mm,
that sort of top
mm,
six race as the season goes on. Look, you mentioned him earlier. I wanted to ask you about Ivanovic, who I was impressed with in that game at the Den on Easter Monday, and I think it's hard not to watch him and be impressed. 20 years of age, still Serbian, like you said. I'm sure he has commanded a lot of interest, and there's a lot of speculation in him. How pivotal is he to what Millwall are going to do this season, his journey as well? Because certainly outside looking in, you're better qualified to speak about this, but didn't look like it's always been maybe a straight road for him at the club.
No, I think that he come over. It was the sort of the back end of the transfer window, and all of a sudden we were breaking our transfer record on a young Serbian striker that no one had heard of. No one had, he just randomly was at the club and having a medical. And I think he, again, our former manager Harris, he kind of come out and said that he wasn't ready for the championship, which is, fans have not forgotten. And obviously his record at the back end of last season has kind of made them comments look a bit silly. But in all honesty, he was raw. he sort of is positioning little things in the game that when you're playing in the championship, you have to be good at, because if you're not, you get found out. And I think it was probably fair to say he wasn't quite ready to maybe be starting every week, but he probably needed the minutes to then get the confidence that he needed. Alex Neil has come in and basically said, right, you're the man, you're our striker. Probably accepted that in the beginning it wasn't going to maybe work out, but he would get chances and opportunities, and his development over the last 6 months has been phenomenal. He looks a real talent. He's a goal scorer, and at this level, we haven't been blessed with many. We've had maybe the odd season where strikers have gone to sort of 15, 16 goals and kind of carried us somewhat. Ivanovic is a goal scorer, and at Millwall, we've been crying out for it for so long. And you're right, the speculation, there's lots of talk of Premier League clubs, Italian clubs, big money for us, potentially on the table. But he seems happy. He seems to want to stay and kind of work this year on helping the team. That's the general feel. Whether or not, big money talks in football, if a bigger offer comes in, will the club be able to turn it down? I don't know, but he is very, very good. And in all honesty, he will outgrow us. It's hard to say when it's your own team and your own, one of your own better players, but he will go on to bigger and better things. And if we can keep him for this year, he might just be the key to getting us into that top six with his goals.
Yeah, if he could do that before 3:00 on Saturday, that would be helpful. Look, let's turn our attentions to this game on Saturday. Then it's in many ways, for the reasons that we outlined right at the start, in many ways the most difficult game to predict and look forward to, because you've got nothing to go on, no basis for sort of what the team lineup will be. Obviously pre-season, but that can be a little bit false in many regards. So I'm going to try and put you on the spot with that context of how do you think Millwall will line up? What will the approach be coming to Carrow? Based off what you said, it sounds like Norwich, and to be fair, we've seen this with Alex Neil's teams previously, that they should expect maybe a team on the front foot to come after them on the opening day at Carrow Road on Saturday.
Absolutely. I think obviously from our perspective, looking in at Norwich, I know again there's been quite a few incomings at Norwich. There's been some Premier League experience and other players from abroad, which you typically do most seasons. So it's hard to predict maybe necessarily how the game will go. But in terms of us, I think Alex Neil was adopting a 4-4-2. In his sort of back end of the spell last year, Ivanovic and Coburn up front, but our wingers tend to be sort of cutting in rather than being out. It's kind of they call it now inverted 4-4-2, don't they, really? But we've got some very good attacking players that I think Neil will go to Carrow Road. He'll respect, Norwich. It's not an easy fixture. Again, as I say, some quality players that you guys have brought in. I mean, looking at, I think Harry Darling is one that caught the eye of a lot of other supporters. We would have loved him ourselves. So you can't just go gung ho. But I think I would expect us to go with two forwards and try to get up the pitch as quick as possible. Not necessarily people tend to put that in the category of going long. I don't necessarily think we play that way. It would be more going out wide and getting our fullbacks forward to get across to the box, but certainly on the front foot, looking to try and win the game rather than play for the draw.
What sort of things can we expect team wise? Are there any players injured, missing, not expected to play for whatever reason?
We look okay. I mean, obviously this is the final week. You don't know what might happen in training. We look okay in terms of who we would expect to play. I touched on earlier that in the centre of midfield might be the only position that we really don't have much of a clue who will play alongside Casper De Norre. You mentioned Luongo from your rivals. Maybe in line for a first championship start for us, but we've got a couple of younger players, but I don't think that's an area that we might not be settled in. But we look good in terms of injuries. Obviously, our number one goalkeeper is out until after Christmas, unfortunately, Lucas Jensen. So we've had to bring in cover. That will be the only other position, but I expect Stephen Bender from Fulham, who we signed on loan, to be in between the sticks.
Final question then, Stephen, maybe the most difficult. How do you see it going? Have you got any inkling on score prediction? I can imagine it's kind of heart over head for a lot of fans at this stage of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke off air, didn't we, and said that, a point on the opening day wouldn't be the worst result. You don't want to lose the first game, whether you're the home team or the away. You want to try and get something on the board. So I think I would be happy with a point, but of course I'm gonna go with the proverbial. I'm gonna go with a win for the Lions. I know it's been since 1968, but there's a lot of optimism. I can hardly say and be positive about our season and then say that we're not going to get a result. But I'll say 2-1 Millwall, but I would be happy with a point in all honesty.
Good man. At some point in some year, that run is going to come to an end. It's got to at some point. So absolutely right. Finally, tell us a little bit about your podcast, Chat with Chaps, and obviously where people can find you if they want to listen to more of your stuff.
Yeah, so Chat with Chaps was started by Chris Chapman. He decided that he was going to run a podcast with all the proceeds to go towards cancer research. So all of our proceeds that we make go towards that fantastic. We have a live show usually on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, dependent on if there's a fixture. We kind of balance between what day. There's post-match analysis. Chris does a review of every game, all kinds of previews and bits and pieces and stuff like that. This would have probably gone out it will have gone out after our live, but we will be discussing the Norwich fixture on our live fixture, so on our live podcast. So if any of the listeners want to sort of hear a bit more of our perspective from what we think from you guys, then feel free to check that out. It's Chat with Chaps on YouTube, and we record and as I say, everything goes towards cancer research. So it's good to be involved with a podcast that's doing some good for charity.
Oh, absolutely brilliant cause as well. I'm sure everyone everywhere really will support your efforts in that. Obviously, good luck for Saturday and beyond. Thank you very much for coming on, Stephen. Thank you all very much for watching. Of course, we will continue to bring you these throughout the season ahead of most weekend games. Midweek ones can be a little bit challenging with how tight the schedule is, but there should be plenty of these to dissect across the season. We're back. It's going to be a roller coaster. See you again very soon.